Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel for our last video on the timeline of world record comic book sales. This has been a fun one to do. It's taken a while. There's a lot of comic books that have sold for world record prices. So, this is where things get crazy and leads us to the present day. And I was definitely paying attention to these books, most of them very intently. So I have a lot of anecdotes to share, some contemporaneous notes about these books, and hopefully it'll be interesting. It certainly has been interesting to put this, to update this list. I'd put it together a while ago, and yeah. So let's get to the exciting stuff. So anyway, after JP exited the market, both the Marvel #1 and the Flash Comics #1 they sold for a loss. I've talked about this before. The Marvel 1 pay copy was, a really difficult book to kind of watch come up for auction and sell for like $210,000 and $220,000. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it was not great for a book that had once sold for $350,000. It was honestly pretty ugly. Um, and because of that, at the high end of the market, books kind of dried up. I may do some research to just talk about how few Action #1s and Detective 27s came up for sale during this period, and how very few, like kind of marquee books came up for sale. But you can imagine you're sitting on something, and you see the difficulty of the Marvel 1 pay copy and how difficult it is for books to recoup money that they'd gotten in the early 2000s. It would scare you off. So. I believe, just as an aside, I believe there was a quiet thaw, like one of those, like, as Rick says, and Rick was involved, I believe, sales I don't know about. One of those sales was said to have happened in 2009, I believe, and the record for $350,000 record was broken. But I've only ever heard that one in passing, like on the forum, and I would have to go back and research it and get more data, and I just don't have that information. So I need to nail that one down, whether it existed, who sold it, what happened, etc. But anyway, it wasn't $1 million book. It may have been a thaw that broke the record for $350,000. But the exciting thing, the headline grabbing thing was this. So that was where we were at, right? We were at this like kind of doldrums period in the hobby. And then suddenly, Action Comics #1, Kansas City copy, CGC 8.0, sold by Comic Connect for $1 million in February of 2010. Here's what I wrote at the time. The Kansas City Action #1, CGC VF 8.0, is listed as sold on the Comic Connect site. It's the first publicly reported sale over $1 million of a comic book. It's actually the first publicly reported sale over $500,000, but who's counting? The price is stronger than what I feel the book is worth by about 25%, but I'm happy to be wrong in this situation. $1 million is a nice round number that will generate a lot of press. Press is good for the hobby, as long as any new people stay away from the books I want to collect. With the speed of the sale, it's clear to me that there's a possibility that this transaction was prearranged or even consummated long before the book was even announced. Comic Connect would have been smart to do so as to guarantee the maximum exposure and publicity for the sale and to protect against a protracted, potentially embarrassing $1 million listing with no takers. So I think I summed it up pretty well back in the day. Yeah. Here's the book. We'll spoilers. We're going to see this book again. So shortly after that, this happened. Detective 27 sold by Heritage. Detective 27 CGC 8.0 sold by Heritage for $1,075,000 in February of 2010. I wrote, "That was the most exciting auction I've ever seen. In a furious round of bidding, it hammered out at $1,075,000 with buyer's premium. And really, it was like one of the most exciting auctions I've ever seen. I'm a fanboy of Detective 27, so I kind of want Detective 27 to hold the record. I know it's probably not going to very often, but it's possible. And I was really excited to see it come back and take the reins. And I will note that they're grade for grade. Detective 27 sold for more than Action Number One. 8080. This is worth $75,000 more. It's a better book. Just kidding. It's 1A and 1B. I get it. It's fine. It's fine. But, thinking about how quickly after the first $1 million sale this auction happened, like, boggles my mind. I was around, and like our heads were spinning. We had been stuck at this $350,000 level for several years, and then all of a sudden, 2 books sold for over $1 million, and really, things were just getting started. Here's the book from the Heritage Auction. A really nice looking copy, great looking 8.0, for sure. And then, okay, so we're on to another one. We had Comic Connect and Heritage going back and forth, trading body blows, trying to like be at the top of the heap. And Comic Connect came back really quickly, March of 2010. Action Comics number 1, CGC 8.5, sold by Comic Connect for $1.5 million. When it was announced that this book was going to be made available, I wrote, word on the street, okay, word on the internet, is that Comic Connect bought outright the 8.5 from its present and longtime owner. The price paid is reportedly more than the $1,075,000 paid for the Detective 27 at Heritage last month. It follows, therefore, that the asking price will be significantly higher than that. My estimate for the book after the recent sales was $1.5 million. We'll see how that number fares when it actually comes time for the book to change hands. All I have to say is, what a month. My head is spinning. And when it sold, I said, I should point out, I valued this one correctly when it was announced. And just like that, we have a new record and the third 7-figure sale. A remarkable month. With this stake in the ground, the questions start to form. What's the Allentown Detective 27 worth? The Church Action 1? My gut says $2.5 million and $3 million respectively. I really need to rework the top 10 article, don't I? When I wrote that I had the Church book valued at $2 million, the Allentown Tech 27 at $1.5 million, and this book at $800,000, times have changed. They certainly had. Here's the book. This was, in the census, very early. I should look up the grade date. The old labels, you have to zoom in so hard to see those, the serial numbers. I wear glasses, as you know. I have to like use a magnifying glass sometimes to see the serial numbers on these books. Like when you have one in hand, it's so tiny. It's like 4-point type. But I should look at the grade date on this. I can't believe I haven't done that. But anyway, this was in the census really early, so it was fascinating to see this book come up for sale. It had just kind of been this like whale, just sitting there waiting for us to find it. This is, by the way, if you're paying attention, if you've seen the other videos, this is the second time this copy set the world record comic price, previously having done so in 1995, which is in the last video in this series. Okay, so everything is kind of like flowing at this point. The market has picked up steam. We have a new level for these books. And then a year and change later, an absolutely crazy bit of news dropped. And we had a sale. Action Comics number 1, the Cage copy, sold by Comic Connect for $2.161 million to Ayman Hariri of the Impossible Collection fame in November of 2011. When it was announced, I wrote, "This is precisely why I love this hobby. Even with all the research and all the biggest brains I can find feeding me information about books, things like this can reappear and upset the apple cart. I'll clearly be writing the most valuable comic books in the world article, and we'll definitely have a new champion on top of the all-time record comic book sales table. I don't see this selling for a penny less than $2 million. What's interesting is I've known about this book for several years, being the copy stolen from Nick Cage and notoriously absent from his massive Heritage auction. I just never knew it was this nice. I also didn't know it was the book that sold at the 1992 Sotheby's auction. End of the quote. And so as a note, selling at the 1992 Sotheby's auction means, as you will know if you've been watching the series, this book has now made 2 appearances on the list, previously setting the record in 1992. And here it was, and here it is. Nice looking book, incredible shock to the hobby. So having this one resurface, come up for sale in short order was fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, so a couple years later, we had that new record set, and things got really exciting, but also a little weird. So we'll go through this one with some detail. Action Comics #1 sold by Pristine Comics on eBay for $3,207,852 to Metropolis, again for Ayman Hariri, in August of 2014. Here's my lengthy note from when this was announced. This one will take a while. I kind of apologize for the long quote, but it's full of information, so we're just going to roll with it. So here we go. Quote, I was in Paris when this news broke, which is probably good because I would have lost a day to the news that CGC had graded a new Action Comics #1 and that it would be for sale on eBay. Headline, on Comic Book Drama. The scan above, I had a scan from the Overstreet Price Guide in the article. The scan above is from a pull-out spread in the Overstreet Price Guide that came out around the same time as the announcement. The timing of all of these releases was aided by the fact that the book was hidden from the CGC census after being graded in February. This was the first piece of interesting and controversial information about the book that came out over the past week. The second is that the book was previously graded 8.0 4 years ago when it was last sold in a private sale. It never appeared in the census at that time and has remained hidden until now. This ability to keep books out of the census came as a surprise to people and was seen as a serious issue by a number of folks on the CGC forum. While I'm not happy with it, I'm also not sure how much damage this practice can really do, as anyone who's serious enough to buy an Action #1 has to have some sense that there's a hidden well of copies outside of the census. Still, I'd rather have as much transparency as possible, so I'd love to see CGC end the practice of keeping books out of the census. There are already enough problems in the census, with ghost books living on well after they've gone on to live in a new, upgraded holder. Beyond that, it's crazy to me that this book sold that recently and was graded 8.0 at the time. Somewhere in the past 4 years, the book got a 1-point bump and is now poised to break the record for the highest price paid for a comic book. I would love to know what the sale was for in 2010. Considering the timing, it has to have been a pretty significant number. Headline, on the book. Bump or no book, this is a beautiful copy of Action #1. It's got white pages and it's not a weak designation. Structurally, it's also very sound. It presents really well. This is probably the coolest book in a CGC holder, in addition to being set to become the most valuable. This is clearly at least the second best known copy of Action #1. That's rarefied air right there. On the auction. It looks like the book will have an opening bid or reserve of $3 million. That's the number that people have to prove that they have in liquid assets in order to pre-qualify to bid. I think that's a realistic number to aim for, but it seems like an aggressive approach to selling the book. Maybe it won't matter here because this is a unique item, but I've never felt great about the performance of auctions on eBay that are either high reserve or start in with a minimum bid that's over GPA. This is 40%, give or take, over the previous record. I want to see the book sell, so I'm hoping my misgivings about the format are misplaced. My real hope is that this is somewhat staged and that there's a known entity ready to break the ice on this book who they know will be willing and able to buy it. What I would really prefer to see would be a true auction starting in at 99 cents and 100 bids later it breaks 3 million. But it's not my book to sell, so there it is. I'm officially confused about eBay as a venue, by the way. I know that the fees on eBay are much lower on paper than any other auction house, but I can't help but think the flow of information around this book would have been more positive if it was being auctioned in this month's Comic Connect event auction or the current Heritage Signature auction. Of course, with a $3 million book, every percentage point counts, so maybe the low fees on eBay beat out any other concern. Just a few days until it goes live. I'll be covering the book until it sells, so keep your eyes on the site to get my take on this historic auction. And here it is. Gorgeous book. eBay was a weird venue, but we got a nice result. Broke $3 million for the first time. And this book held on to the record for a while. Again, similar to the pay copy and the Flash Comics #1, it held on to the record for several years. Like I said, things stayed pretty steady for a while. Then COVID happened, and collectibles, for a number of reasons, collectibles of all sorts went crazy, and comics were no different. I've talked a lot about some of the kind of crazy sales that have happened. This one I don't think is crazy. I think is just a natural progression of where the hobby was going. But anyway, Action Comics #1 sold by Comic Connect for $3.25 million in April of 2021. This book once again makes an appearance in the world record list, right in the middle of the COVID boom. By the way, there was a sale of this book in the middle, between the $1.5 million record sale and in 2010 and this record sale in 2021. It sold for $2,052,000 in 2018, all on Comic Connect. This is the first mention of the $2,052,000 sale I've made on the channel, by the way. So there you have it, a little trivia. Here's the book once again. I continue to have to look at the serial number. I'll do it. Things went on from there. We're still in COVID collectible boom era. We had Amazing Fantasy #15 sold by Heritage for $3.6 million in September of 2021. Here are the things I wrote about the book, and I'm going to give you the date, the headline, and my comments, because there's a lot of them. I went rapid fire. July 21st, 2021. Heritage to offer Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6. It will set a new record for a Silver Age book and sell for $2 million plus. Then on August 21st, 2021, Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6 is live on Heritage. All the popcorn in the world is not enough to get me through this auction. Very quickly, on August 25th, 2021, the Heritage Amazing Fantasy #15 CGC 9.6 is now the third most valuable comic of all time, $2,310,000. And my comment was, I have started to lean towards the idea that this book will end up setting the overall record for a comic book at auction. That it's at $2.3 million with weeks to go makes me think I'm going to be correct. My initial take was $2 million or more and a new record for a Silver Age book. I think it will be a new record overall at this point. September 9th, 2021. Heritage sells Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6 for $3.6 million, a new world record for a comic book. I'll have more on this result later as I gather my thoughts about what it means for the top of the market as a whole, but it fell right in the middle of the range I'd landed on a few weeks ago. It took a bit of nudging to get over the line, but it made it and set a new record for any comic book ever sold. I thought it had a shot at $4 million, but it didn't quite have the legs. I'm interested to see if Comic Connect has a surprise up their sleeves to take the records back. We can only dream. As of late 2021, this copy, serial number 10714790001, is a world record comic. I don't know what the next 9.6 will sell for, which is why the other copies will be outside of the top 10. But this one crushed it. So it's a deserving return for Amazing Fantasy 15 back into the top 10. This is the world's most valuable comics list. This is what I'm referring to. Lots of folks were skeptical, including me, although I came around. I don't think anyone will ever underestimate the power of Spider-Man again. Here's the book, Record Setter. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. We're getting to some exciting stuff. And this is one of my favorite books on the list. So, Superman #1, sold by Tony Arnold, Roy Delick for $5.3 million in April of 2022. This sale was great to see for a lot of reasons. Obviously, I love to see new record sales. I also love to see church copies reign supreme. But I was also really happy to see longtime CGC forum member Roy Delick of Vintage Comics involved in this sale. He's a great guy, extremely knowledgeable, and truly passionate about comics. You've got to love seeing somebody like that involved in a big sale like this. And he's very proud of it, and he deserves, all the kudos for this he can get. So I'm giving him some. Just as an aside, this book has had a lot of speculation about it over the years. I feel like it may have taken a circuitous journey from its mid-1990s previous entry on this list to its modern-day splash as the first $5 million comic, but I don't actually know anything. People would speculate that it was for sale, it had sold, whatever. None of it was public, so who knows? It's fun to speculate, but I don't have any actual information about what happened to it between the mid-90s and now, which is fine. Who cares? A comic from the Church collection sold for over $5 million. That's all you need to know. Here's the book. One of the interesting things about it being out in the open like this is the ability to look at the grader's notes. So I saw the book in person, as I've mentioned. It looked better than an 8.0 to me at the time, and I said so in the forums and in person with people. And I've heard anecdotes from multiple people that there was some damage to the interior of the book. At the same time, there was also some speculation that it used to have some restoration to the interior, which was subsequently removed to avoid the purple label of death. Looking at the grader's notes, the interior damage is borne out. There is interior damage, which brings the grade down versus what it looks like. We can't know if those small pieces out were ever filled, but in the era that this book was originally sold, it wouldn't have been out of the ordinary at all, which is why there are some even keys from the Church collection that are in purple labels. And it does have a spot of color touch, so somebody did something to it. So let's just look at the full report real quick. Bottom spine wear breaks color, bottom staple recessed, front cover restoration light color touch, interior small multiple pieces out, which is the one that we've always speculated about, left bottom front cover multiple stain, left center back cover light interior stain, spine stress lines, top spine wear breaks color, which is, it's all nitpicky, to be honest. That book is gorgeous. So. And here we go, my final entry on the list. This one is more recent, and I was just starting to pay attention to things when this happened, so I don't have contemporaneous notes from when the book was announced or when it was auctioned off. What I can tell you is that the buyer of this book for $1 million, assuming he was a seller at this point, made a boatload of money. Assuming, for simplicity's sake, and it is possible, that there was no seller's commission, the seller made $4 million on this sale. After a couple of videos in a row talking about huge losses, let's celebrate one of the biggest potential profits of all time. Action Comics #1, Kansas City, CGC 8.5, got a half-point bump, sold by Heritage for $6 million in April of 2024. And here's the book. That's it for now. I will have to update, maybe not all of these videos, but I'll do an update video whenever we have a new record. You can be sure of that. Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for checking out the series. It's been fun to go through, and it's been really interesting to see how much I ended up fine-tuning the list just over the past couple of months. Like, I've added new information, removed some books, and have some avenues to do some research on to make the list better. As always, if you know about anything that especially the early stuff that I don't know about, please share in the comments. I would love to know about it. Yeah. So, now, like, just to finish up, we're in the phase now where we're waiting for the first $10 million book. And soon, I'll be sharing a video on the world's 25 most valuable comics. And in that, we'll speculate, when we get to the top end, we'll speculate about what books could sell for that much money and which ones actually might sell for that much money. Which books would actually, come up for sale at Heritage or Comic Connect or whatever. With that, thanks again for all your support, especially if you made it all the way through this video. This is a fun one to put together, as you can probably tell. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Tell me what you think in the comments, and drop a like on the video. Every bit helps. I'll be back next week with a new video, and see you then.